Each year, Rolex sells more than 1 million watches. Each one generates more profit than almost any other luxury product on the planet. And yet, there isn't a single public shareholder. No one can buy a share of Rolex. It's not publicly traded. It doesn't publish its earnings. It earned a tool factory that provided them with a comfortable life. Hans was the second of 3 children, and his childhood, as he would write decades later, was peaceful. That peace came to an abrupt end. When Hans was just 11 years old, his mother died. A year later, his father followed her. At 12, Hans Wilsdorf was an orphan. His uncles took charge. They sold the family factory and used some of the money to send Hans and his siblings to a boarding school in Bavaria. It was there that Hans developed something no one expected from a child who had just lost. Hans Wilsdorf had other plans. He wanted to leave Germany. He wanted to see the world. At 19, in 1900, Hans moved to La Chaux-de-Fonds, Switzerland, the heart of the country's watchmaking industry. There, he began working for Kuno Korten, a company that exported Swiss pocket watches worldwide. Hans's job wasn't glamorous. He spent hours winding and testing hundreds of watches a day, writing business correspondence in 3 different languages. But here's the important point. Hans Wilsdorf was never a watchmaker. He didn't know how to assemble a movement from scratch. He didn't master precision mechanics like the artisans who worked around him. What Hans mastered was something else. He understood how to sell a watch, not just how to build it. And as he observed the business from the inside, he began to notice something that no one else seemed to take seriously. Pocket watches were doomed. Wristwatches existed, but they were considered inaccurate, almost a feminine accessory, not something a serious man would use to tell the time. Wilsdorf thought differently. He was convinced that one day, everyone would wear time on their wrist. In 1903, he moved to London. There, he met Alfred James Davis, a man who would turn out to be much more than a business partner. He would also become his brother-in-law. In 1905, Wilsdorf and Davis founded Wilsdorf and Davis in London. The business model was simple, but bold for the time. They imported high-precision Swiss watch movements, made by the watchmaker Hermann Egler, and placed them in elegant cases to sell as finished wristwatches. They weren't making anything from scratch. They were assembling a promise. For years, Wilsdorf traveled constantly, speaking with watchmakers, studying every detail of the manufacturing process, searching for a way to convince the world that a wristwatch could be as accurate, or more so, than a pocket watch. But he needed more than just a good product. He needed a name, a short one, easy to pronounce in any language, easy to engrave on the dial of a tiny watch. As Wilsdorf himself would recount years later, he tried hundreds of letter combinations. And one morning, traveling on the upper deck of a horse-drawn bus through the streets of London, the word appeared in his mind, almost out of nowhere. Rolex. Short. Easy to say in English, French, and German. And, according to him, it sounded like the mechanical noise of a clock winding itself. In 1908, he registered the name as a trademark. The company that would buy the whole world now had an identity. Now, it needed a reputation. The problem with early wristwatches wasn't just accuracy. It was fragility. Dust, humidity, and sweat easily ruined the internal mechanisms. If Wilsdorf wanted the world to trust the wristwatch, he had to solve that problem first. In 1926, Rolex patented the Oyster, the world's first watertight and waterproof wristwatch case, with a screw-down crown that sealed the mechanism like an oyster shell. It was a true technical achievement. But Wilsdorf knew that a technical achievement alone doesn't sell anything. He needed a public, dramatic, and impossible to ignore test. He found it in Mercedes Gleitze, a British typist who in 1927 set out to become the first British woman to swim across the English Channel. Wilsdorf gave her a Rolex oyster to wear throughout the crossing. Gleitze swam for more than 10 hours in icy waters. When she finally reached the shore, the watch on her wrist was still working perfectly. Wilsdorf didn't waste a second. He bought the entire front page of the Daily Mail to announce the feat, making it, in essence, the first extreme testimonial advertisement in watchmaking history. He didn't sell a watch. He sold a story of superhuman endurance, featuring an object anyone could buy. That was Wilsdorf's masterstroke, repeated time and again, for decades, taking Rolex watches to the summit of Mount Everest, to the bottom of the deepest ocean trench, to the wrists of explorers and pilots. Every feat was, at its core, an advertisement. Wilsdorf understood something his competitors would take decades to grasp. People don't buy a mechanism. They buy a story they can wear. This is where the Rolex story diverges from that of every other luxury brand in the world. Hans Wilsdorf never had children. And as he grew older, he faced a question that had no conventional answer. What would happen to the company when he died? There was no natural heir, no family waiting to take over. In 1945, Wilsdorf made a decision no other founder of a luxury brand had ever made before. He created the Hans Wilsdorf Foundation and transferred all his shares in the company to it. From that moment on, Rolex didn't belong to an individual. It belonged to a foundation. This means that, technically, Rolex has no owner in the traditional sense. There's no billionaire behind the brand. There are no shareholders demanding quarterly returns. There's no pressure from Wall Street. The foundation controls the company, and much of Rolex's profit goes to charitable causes in Geneva, scholarships, hospitals, social projects, rather than dividends for investors. It is, quite literally, one of the reasons why Rolex can afford to be so secretive. It doesn't have to answer to anyone but itself. Rolex doesn't disclose exact sales figures. It doesn't reveal how many watches it manufactures each year. It doesn't disclose its profit margins. In an industry where almost every brand competes for visibility, Rolex built its power by doing the exact opposite, withholding information, controlling every detail of its distribution, and creating artificial scarcity that has made certain models harder to acquire than a first-class seat. So why does a Rolex cost what it does? It's not just the gold or the special-grade steel the brand manufactures in its own foundries. It's the controlled scarcity, the absence of shareholder pressure, and nearly a century of stories. Swimmers in the English Channel, mountaineers on Everest, explorers at the bottom of the ocean, building, feet after feet, a single idea: that this small object on your wrist represents something that money alone cannot directly buy. Today, certain vintage Rolex models sell at auction for millions of dollars. The company that a Bavarian orphan built by assembling borrowed parts is now, by many estimates, the most valuable watch brand on the planet.